Welcome to Board Game Binge, the place where we bring you bite-sized, bingeable board game content from across the industry. I'm your host, James Staley, and in this episode, we're chatting with Stella from Meeple University and GUFF Studios, along with board game designer Takashi Sawada. Their new title, Floating Floors, is currently on Kickstarter, and man, does it look cool. Stella, Takashi, welcome to the binge. How you doing?
Thank you so much. Thanks for having us.
Oh, it is great to have you guys here. As I was saying just before we got on air, sometimes it takes a bit to kind of put the dots together with different people that you're talking to. And we've been corresponding regarding this Kickstarter. And then when you sent your bio over, I'm like, wait a second, this is Stella from Meeple University. Oh my gosh, this is like just right up to now, an even higher level than I expected. So happy to have you on the podcast, and we're going to get into it.
Thanks for having us. You like, it's definitely not, you make it as big as, not as big as that.
Oh, it's you're really, a very humble person, but I've been following your content for quite some time. So it's been, it's absolutely a pleasure to have you on this podcast. So you are the co-creator of Meeple University. This is a YouTube channel. I checked, you've got about 13,000 followers, which is quite impressive. This started 3 years ago. I think your first episode was on February 21st, 2018. And it was interesting. It was your partner, Terrence, that did the first episode.
Indeed.
And he did a playthrough on Parade, right? The card game Parade, which I actually own. I actually love that game. I was introduced to that game about 3 years ago.
Yeah.
How did you guys start Meeple University? Like, what was the whole intent behind this? Was it more to start off like just educating people on how to play games, or how did it start?
That's a very good question. And thank you for remembering our first ever video. That was really bad. Not really that proud of it, but hey, your first video ever in the channel is usually...
The first episode of Board Game Binge was pretty rough too, so no worries.
It was originally, we were just having it for fun. It was definitely just a passion. And I know that I noticed, I was kind of like into maybe 2 years into the hobby, and which is board game. And I noticed that Taron is really good at explaining things. So I was like, okay, how about if you explain the things, the games that we like on video, and we just put it on the channel, mainly just for us. So we remember how it plays when we want to play it again. So there was no tripod, no proper camera, no lightings, no microphone. It was really bad. And there you go. That's our first video where we have that one of our favorite games, Parade, how to play, and that's it. And then the rest is kind of history, and we've got other types of videos. So
yeah, and it kind of evolved, right? And I mean, there's you do a little bit of cosplay in there too, which is kind of fun, right? And the quality of the videos. I mean, I know you're. It's easy to kind of look back on, and most people when they look back on the first video they started with, right, and look back and say, it's kind of where I am now versus where it was. It was kind of rough, but you have to start somewhere. Right. And I would say this to any content creator out there, you literally can start a blog, a channel with a cell phone, right? Yeah. In TikTok, it's even easier to do that now, right? TikTok comes with an inherent audience, and the algorithms actually favor helping you build an audience. So
that's true.
But it is cool to see how much your quality has kind of really stepped it up over the years, right? Like you guys have some very high quality production value now in your videos. At what point did the investment kind of start? At what point did you kind of say, okay, this is something that's going to go, a little bit longer term here, and we really want to up our game? When did that kind of kick in?
Well, we always try to improve. So it's really like bits and pieces. So feedback from people, trying to see, what can be improved, like slowly getting the tripod, getting the light, getting the microphone, trying to convince Taryn to make a purchase, the hardest bit, but I ended up just doing it anyway. So there's like this always little improvements. Even now, we're going to move a different studio. This is like, it's totally, I should probably not say anything yet, but we're going to move to it's like the first time you hear about this. James channel, the board game binge. So it will be like a proper video. So we're going to have like soundproofing, proper stuff as well.
Oh, cool.
So always trying to improve from phone to 3 cameras now. I'm sure I have more if Taryn let me. No, it's not like, we just like have to make sure that the other ones agree. So there's not really a point as such. Just all little bits and pieces, and until now, it's like, oh, when did that happen? Type of thing.
And then, so when did GUFF? So, and we're gonna transition into Takashi here in a second. But so GUFF Studios. Then what was the genesis of that?
Because Mark Carter is the founder of GUFF Network in Australia already, which has, what is it, Takashi? Board game shops everywhere, like branches. Retailers. Retailers, that's it. And there's Carl, who's the designer and has got game published, and there's me. So Mark, we had this conversation jokingly on the way to Essen. We like next to each other on the plane, and we talk about, maybe we should have, a publishing company and so on. And then Mark was like, how about the 3 of us? Because we have different skills. Let's just put our skills together and then make GUFF. And by the way, I've got Orchard already lining up. Cool. It was our first co-published Orchard, the solo game.
Yep.
And then that's from there. That's it. That's GUFF.
And then you also, so GUFF started by co-publishing some games, right? So Endless Winter, Steamed Up, which are very, very popular titles. Obviously, I don't think anybody didn't see those titles. I mean, the marketing was great. It was everywhere, right? So congrats.
The ladies
on
are great,
Yeah. So, and then what was the key decision factor to go from co-publishing to saying, okay, we're just going to straight up now publish games?
We're always in the hunt of publishing games. That has always been our intention, but we just want to find the right time, but more the right game. And this is where Tech came in.
Yeah.
I'll let Tech probably tell the story.
How did you guys meet? Yeah, tell me the story, how you guys met.
Tech, on to you now.
On to me. Okay. So, I'm going to just kind of bridge from where you left off there, Stella. It's a bit of a funny story. I was taking Floating Floors in the direction of self-publishing for a Kickstarter. That's something that I was pretty certain on for a while. And I actually reached out to Stella, Meeple University, to see if they would be willing to do a how to play video for me.
Oh, okay.
And because I'm a fan. I've been following the channel, and I was like, hey, these guys would be great, especially for the audience that I'm trying to reach out to. Greater than I expected. So we came up with a how to play video, and as we were just gearing up for that launch, a few weeks out, Stella reaches back out to me and she's like, hey, Tech, I've got some exciting news for you and a proposition. She introduces me to GUFF Studios, which I pretty soon find out that is made up of Mark, herself, and Carl. Yeah. And immediately I'm star-studded. I have known Meeple University for some time. Also Carl, he's been quite active in the Game Developers Association for Australia. And so, it's just awesome. I'm grateful for Stella for making that connection. But that's more or less how we bridged that gap, how we met. And, we discussed whether there was, because it was a pretty big pivot. I was pretty close to hitting that big green button. I'm so glad I didn't at this stage. But it was a big pivot, and we just educated our audience. We were like, hey, we've got some exciting developments over a couple of weeks, and we
So I think TAC is breaking up a bit. But one thing I would say is that it is a huge...
The game was signed over to GUFF Studios for an even grander...
Breaking up a little bit, TAC.
Yeah, he's got notes. So while we're waiting for him to kind of reconnect, what I would say is that I think that... that's a huge decision to make, right? When you have a game that you've been working on for a good chunk of your life, right? So my understanding is you've been working on this for 10 years and you're ready to launch, right? This is your baby. and then someone decides that they're going to reach out to you and say, hey, maybe we can help you. And, I've talked to a lot of people that have their games where they, and he's back, that have their games.
Yeah.
Just let me finish this point. That have their games and they want to, it's their baby. And I had one colleague that was doing this, and he's like, I really we want to do it ourselves, right? Just because there's been so much time, energy, and effort into doing that. And it's a leap, right? And it's a leap from two perspectives. One, it's a leap into probably safety, quite frankly, when you have, a group of people that know what they're doing, that are offering to help you. But the other hand, you're kind of letting go of a little bit of control, a little bit of kind of, what you maybe have envisioned and having to bring other team members in. So, Tak, now that you're back, explain to me that decision process where you had to kind of balance those two.
Oh, you phrased it so well there, James. Good to be back. Yeah, so
we're live.
Yeah, we're live. It is a big leap. That's a good way of putting it. It was that, to a certain degree, no way of rewording it really, that trade-off in most cases when you're signing a game over to a publisher. So self-publishing, I wanted to go the route of self-publishing because I felt like it was my baby, that I've been caring for, nurturing, developing, growing for the past few years. And I had a very specific vision as to how I wanted it to, show up in the hands of people around the world, if possible, to as many people around the world as possible. And it's largely due to, I'm not sure whether we'll have time to talk about it, but kind of like a tribute to something that I'm pretty passionate about, or that I'm a fan of more so, is Hearns's works, the Atori series. So that's kind of where the idea of the game came from. With that very specific vision, there have actually been other scenarios where passing it on to another publisher have arose, and I actually rejected those. For the reasons you've just mentioned. It seemed like we just weren't getting the traction that I was looking for. I wanted to see it arrive in the hands of people around the world, but time was ticking on as we're waiting for that to get play tested and for them to come to some sort of decision. And then if they did, there's no guarantee that they'll actually put it out there. It just becomes a part of the line. And so I was like, no, not doing this. I'm just going to self-publish. And it was only when I was having that conversation with Stella where I felt a little more confidence in the idea that GUFF Studios had my best interests in mind, and the best interests of the game that I had in mind as well. And we see that to this day. It's what we see on the shelf. It looks pretty. It's been well developed.
It looks cool.
The core
There's
of the
no
game,
doubt about that. Just looking at
it looks
the game,
it looks very cool.
This looks cool.
Yeah. But the core of the game, all the elements that were originally there are still there. And I couldn't be more grateful. They've been consulting me the entire way through to this day. And there's just been rapid communication back and forth, whereas it's not something that you find every day when negotiating with a publisher.
So can you explain, how did you come up with the idea of this game? So and there's two parts to that. One is I want to know kind of the genesis of how you came up with the idea, obviously, but the second, when I look at a game like this, it reminds me of other games I've seen which are very much abstract type games that aren't themed. And it seems like that this may have started off as an abstract game that then you got clever and wrapped a theme around it. And I think that's where a lot of abstract games miss the mark, especially with Kickstarter, right? It's very tough to get an abstract game to fund on Kickstarter. And the problem with that is many of them don't have a theme, right? There's no kind of story. There's no narrative around it. It's just literally trying to figure out, the abstract. So what was your approach coming into this game? Is that how it happened, or was it really the kind of theme was there from the beginning?
Yeah, so I would say it's more so the latter. The theme has kind of always been there. So I've got this book in my hand here. Yeah. And it's, I'd actually, it was titled a different game altogether. It was called Nightingale Ninja. named after the book Across the Nightingale Floor, and the Nightingale Floors in Japanese castles. And so the theme was there, but it was a very different game altogether. It was more like a dungeon crawler where you're going through several tiers of a Japanese castle, trying to complete all these missions, whilst not to trigger the traps of the Nightingale Floor.
So what is a Nightingale Floor for people that don't know what that is?
Yes. So Nightingale Floor, it was kind of we've got, security systems in our homes, and it was kind of the ancient security system of the time, or that's what the theory is. So we all heard of ninja to a certain degree, and these ninja, they were thought to carry out covert missions. Sometimes infiltrating, somewhere within a castle or a temple maybe. And so these Nightingale floors, they were constructed in a way to kind of, we know of creaky floorboards, but these tweet as if it's the sound of like a nightingale warbler or a nightingale bird. And how they mimic that sound is just uncanny. But when you stand on these floorboards, these Nightingale floors, they tweet like a nightingale. So it's a very distinct noise. Cool. And that would alert the guards, the sentries, to this intruder in the castle. Yeah. And that's the Nightingale floors.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
So then, and I'm showing this game to as an overlay here for people who are watching. Can you explain, so how do you play the game? So how did you kind of interject that theme into this game? It's very unique. I haven't really seen a game like this myself. There might be others out there, but one like this where you're having to actually build floor supports, and then you're trying to get the other players to kind of make a wrong decision and tip over and almost entrap them. Can you walk us through kind of how you play this game?
Yeah, so floating floors, not Nightingale floors, floating floors. It's an interesting one in that I wanted to involve a lot of trade-offs with every decision that's made. I wanted it to be, as you put, abstract, but thematic. It's a game where you are a ninja set out on a mission to reclaim these Bunsen targets that have been scattered across the landscape by the rival ninja clan. And to do so, it's not as simple as just, jumping from Earth space to Earth space. What you need to do is you've got this terrain laid out in front of you, a bit like a puzzle, and you need to use these jutsu wooden tokens in a variety of ways to construct these. They appear to be floating floors, but they're balanced on these jutsu, one layer of jutsu.
Yeah. And
the floorboards are color-coded to either the shadow or the light. To correspond with the color of your ninja. And it becomes quite puzzling that your ninja, being a ninja, can only ever stand on its color in order to remain camouflaged and covert. So you need to hop from floor space to floor space to get to your targets. But as I mentioned before, these floorboards, they're balanced on these jutsu underneath, right? Mm-hmm. In very specific locations. There's limits on each piece of terrain. In some cases, you need to put the jutsu on the top of the floorboard to either counterbalance the weight of your ninja, or for your ninja to stand on if it's like a rival floor space. Yeah, and that's how you construct the floating floors. And yeah, so the first player to successfully claim all 4 of their targets wins.
That is cool. And when I was looking at it, and one thing I didn't catch the first time around, but now you've explained it, so the black player is basically going to play on the black squares. You're playing the white. So you are actually going across different parts of the same floor.
Yeah, right? That's right. It's all shared.
And the way you set up the balance of the floor for your tiles, for your player, may not work from a balance perspective for the other player.
That's the intention.
Right. That's
so you're moving some of these supports. They're moving some supports. And can you move the supports while someone else is on the floor and kind of force them off the floor?
Now, that's an interesting one. So you can actually, you can very easily sabotage the path of a ninja. And it's all a timing thing as well. Yeah. Where if you roll, you've got these jutsu dice, you get the right roll, you can actually, instead of picking up jutsu from the supply, which is a finite amount, you can pick them up from the board itself, from underneath floorboards to make them less stable, or from on top of the floorboards. but you need to do so without the floorboard actually collapsing, which would end in a penalty. So doing so can make it that much more precarious for your rival to cross on that floorboard. So it can really get them into a corner.
And then how does so it's a 2 to 4 player game, so I can visualize how 2 players work. So how does it work with the 4 players?
Yeah, so with 3 to 4 players, you've got a grid of 3 by 3.
Okay.
So it's a perfect square of these terrain cards. And that's really probably the biggest difference. Would you say, Stella?
Yeah. Yep.
Then,
3 players is Battle Royale, and 4 players either Battle Royale or 2 versus 2 team, which is fun as well.
So 2 will be white ninjas, 2 will be black ninjas. Is that how you kind of set it up, or?
Yeah.
Got it. And when I see these puzzle-based type games or puzzly games, when you're kind of figuring out how to lay it out, it often seems conducive to 1-player games as well. Is that something you guys have worked through with this game? Like, are you guys in the process of doing like a solo mode for this game, or?
Love to have solo mode. Tag.
We're getting a lot of questions on that, and you're right. Yes. Too often with these sort of puzzly games, it does kind of almost imply in that direction to a certain degree, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, it's definitely something that I would be interested in.
I think we toy with the idea. We talked about it. Yeah, we'll see what will happen.
Playing around with it.
I don't want to give away any secrets if there's stuff already
Secret of the Ninja.
And this campaign, congratulations, by the way, it's already funded. So if this sounds interesting to people, I mean, it's not a question of, is this going to fund? It's already funded. So now it's a matter of how much further past the funding goal you go. When setting up this particular Kickstarter, what was some of the strategies you guys employed? Stella, obviously you have a lot of experience in this regard with different campaigns that you've helped, co-produce and even market and so forth under the Dice Tower. What are some of the key things that you really wanted to make sure was going to be in place for this particular campaign?
Well, I actually mainly do the content, not the actual, like the Kickstarter page.
Sure.
But Carl has some experience with helping, I think the Quillsilver. He also works with Quillsilver, which is a game developer company in Australia. So we both just put our heads together. We had help as well with Steam Up Hot Banana Games, the ladies that has the really successful campaign. So they have helped us a little bit as well. And then we kind of like, they give us idea on the layout. So which one is which order it is, and the review and preview that we had. So we try to spread it out and have plenty of them around the world as well. So it's kind of like, it's always the same with Meeple University. It's always like learning process and keep improving and then see what works and see what doesn't, basically. But yeah, I think the team helps. And
I see one of the upgrades on the page is screen printed Ninja Meeples. Where
yes.
You've got literally 4 different Meeples, I guess. So 2 that are kind of in crouching positions and 2 that are standing up. Is that something that, so I guess this would help you identify who the different ninjas are. How do you tell the difference between them when it's like pre-upgrade? Are the Meeples marked in some way? So with the 2 white ones, are they different positions, or how does that work?
Just different colors, and for 2 players, just different colors, and for 4 players, and standing and crouching. 3 can be anything else. Okay, yeah.
Oh, that's cool. And then what about print and play? Is there going to be a print and play option of this game at all?
I think Tech had it early in the day, right? But it's the early.
Yeah, that's a very early prototype. So I don't know. Maybe that is a question also for GUFF Studios and the team.
It's like if
we talk,
print and play, I got it. Yeah.
We thought about it, but the thing is, the things need to be balanced, and it needs to be not slippery. The paper needs to be right.
Yeah, that's
and because it is a kind of like dexterity. It's a physics game, if anything, I guess. So it needs to work well with the components.
And then how dexterous do you have to be to manipulate the pieces? Like the tiles seem fairly large, so it seems to me that they should be pretty easy, because I see one scene where you actually have to rotate them and so forth and place the different supports down. Was that something you guys spent a lot of time on, just trying to figure out how to make this dexterity an element, but not so much so that it becomes kind of unavailable to, you know, the broader population?
Yeah, so that was really years of development right there. Just trying to get that balance right, because for me, I wanted to invoke a visceral experience for the audience, for players, where they could connect with what it might have felt like to be a ninja crossing those floors. A ninja wouldn't just be like we see them in films, you know, like jumping from wall to wall and then suddenly vanishing out of thin air. That's all pretty exciting, but I wanted to expose a world of ninja where there's a tactical mindset as well. I wanted to achieve that balance between like that tactical thinking, that strategy, that foresight that you would have need to have, in addition to that dexterity element. And I wanted to make it accessible. My primary play testers have actually been, family members for the most part, actually my 8-year-old daughter. 4 years old when I originally started the game. So it needed to work in both directions with my, you know, fat fingers and with her very nimble, but still, you know, working on that for those fine motor skills back then. And I've gone through several like different shapes, wooden blocks, different weights, different materials. I've used metal, ceramic, and from what we've seen, what we see in the current copy, where each jutsu is about 1/4 of the floor space, and it's about like a centimeter cube. That seems to work pretty well. It's just dexterous enough for you to feel that kind of that trepidation when you're placing something down, but it's not going to make something entirely fall apart unexpectedly. You know, you can still work the physics there. Yeah.
And I noticed you guys are on Tabletop Simulator as well. How does that work when you have a game that's all based on dexterity, and like, how did you guys work that?
Yeah, the good thing is that it's in Tabletop Simulator, physics still works.
That's
compared
true too,
to in Tabletopia, it does not work. So we don't have it in Tabletopia, unfortunately, but it kind of works, and it makes it sort of like a slightly different game. We have played through on that as well, Tech, you and Carl. It's different. It's like, I don't know. You can explain it as well. How does it feel? You just click with the mouse. It's like mouse skill, I guess, like mouse skill. But you still stumble, right? Like your ninja still stumbles.
It is like TTS actually mimics the physics very well.
Yeah. Well, I was thinking about that because I've built stuff in Tabletop Simulator, and like even if you tip the corner of something, it will kind of tip over. So although it's probably not going to mimic exactly the play of the game, it should give people enough of a feel, I'm sure, they can get kind of the idea of how it would work then, I guess, right?
Yeah. Might be even easier, maybe just a touch, because
now you've got your company's now called Gumboot, I guess. Is that the name of the
Gumboot Games?
So where did that name come from?
So it's a bit of an unusual story. I was in the development of floating floors at the time. I was just sitting out in my backyard with my backyard chickens out there in front of me, squawking away. And I just finished feeding the chickens, cleaning the coop. I picked up Gabe Barrett's Kickstarter advice from the best in the world book. I kicked up my gumboots in front of me, just sat back there, and I was reading through this. I was looking for a name for a company, leading up to my Kickstarter, and I was like, Gumboot Games. We'll call it Gumboot Games, and that was pretty much the origination of it.
Sometimes names can come from just the weirdest spots, all right, but it kind of works. It kind of sticks, I guess, right? The Gumboot. So, what is the plan for Gumboot? Like you've been working on this game for a long time, and as a developer, I'm sure that you have many, many ideas that are kind of in the wings to work on. Are any of those going to be coming soon, or kind of where do you go from here? How does this kind of play out for you?
Yeah, I guess with Floating Floors as a real passion project, that baby that we've been talking about, it's something that I wanted to, I have dabbled in a few game designs, for other concepts meanwhile. But I find myself very quickly detracting from those and going straight back to floating floors. And so in the end, I've kind of just decided, hey, let's just see this through. And, I can get back on the horse with some other designs in the works. So more as a hobby at this stage. But yeah, I think the intention for Gumboot Games, it might be reaching out to somewhat similar audience to say GUFF Studios, but I just wanted it to be like small footprint and very tactile in experience. We actually have the annual gumboot throwing competition here in New Zealand, which is where you literally throw gumboots like an axe to see how far you can get it. That's also partly where the name came from. And I want that to kind of be a guiding beacon, that I want that tactile experience, that connection with the scenery that you're playing in. So I've got a couple of ideas still in my notebook there that gradually being developed on, but yeah.
And then would expansions to this game maybe come first then, would you say?
Yeah, so that's pretty tempting, I must say. Like, I'm itching to get going with publishing my own games for sure. But expansions, I probably have more pages dedicated to expansion ideas in that notebook than I do of other designs.
Yeah, I can just imagine. I mean, other people I've talked to that have games that are kind of puzzly like this. Typically, a year later, here's a whole another set of puzzles that we're going to give you, and then maybe there'll be some other thing that's added on as a mechanic. But certainly, there's many different directions you can go with this game, and it starts with a successful Kickstarter, which you guys clearly have, and you must be very happy with where you've landed so far. I know that you still got like 14 days to go. You always have that huge hockey stick at the back end. The last 72 hours, it swings up. So it's all gravy from here. I want to wish you guys all the best of this campaign. I can't wait to see where it ends. I'm going to be watching it, and all the best to you guys this year. You take care.
Thanks so much.
Awesome. Thanks so much, James.
Cheers. This has been an episode of the Board Game Binge podcast, hosted by James Staley, produced by James Staley and Mike Bruner, with original music by Nick Smith. If you would like to watch these interviews live, simply subscribe to our YouTube channel, Board Game Binge, and you'll get access to live interviews, giveaways, and interesting board game content from across the industry. I can't wait for you to join us. See you next time.